One of the skellies swung its axe and sliced the man clean in half, but in the next second, his body scattered into a pile of talismans, then quickly reformed into a new body. The dude clearly hadn't expected our boy to actually attack, let alone want to kill him. However, the fact that he almost shit his pants against someone much lower in level left him both furious and humiliated. Lin recognized the skill right away, remarking that it's probably substitute death, a high-level Onmyoji skill, quite troublesome to deal with. Then, out of nowhere, a Shikigami appeared behind him, axe raised high and ready to strike. The sudden attack made him slightly surprised, but the blow didn't even budge his skeletal armor. He scoffed, almost bored, muttering how weak it was. Nonetheless, the skellies got to work and smashed the Shikigami apart in an instant. Lin, already feeling restless, decided it was time to finish things quickly. He unleashed Soul Flame, and the man screamed in agony, demanding to know what kind of flame it was. But the only answer he got was in the form of a skeletal mage's elemental explosion. With a blast, he burst apart once more into talisman scraps, only to reappear nearby. Yet the soul flame somehow clung to him, still burning at his very essence. He panicked, confused why his substitute death skill couldn't shake it off. But the truth was simple, that is, because the flame wasn't targeting his body, but rather his soul. With a sharp command, Lin had the skeletal sharpshooters raise their longbows. The arrow flew straight through the man's body. For the third time, his substitute death skill triggered, and now he was at the edge of his limit. Fear finally showed in his voice as he pleaded, insisting they were both human, that they could talk this out. Lin only gave him a cold glance. To him, anyone who had dealings with the abyss no longer deserved to be called human. He thought it better that the man just die and see how many more lives he could burn through. Another wave of soul flame engulfed him. The man shrieked, begged, and wailed until his voice broke off. His body plummeted from the air, hitting the ground hard, never to rise again. This was the first time Lin had gone this far against another professional. A cold smirk tugged at his lips as he turned to the rest and announced it was now their turn. The Black Dragon Society members stood frozen, too terrified to speak, but Lin showed no mercy, and soon their corpses piled up around him. The members of Galen could only watch in shock, still unable to believe one person had wiped out the entire Black Dragon Society. It felt like a dream. Meanwhile, Leon, wide-eyed, asked if Lin was really only level 52. Lin answered firmly that he was. Feeling a little speechless, Leon scratched his head, baffled at how someone at that level could be so powerful. Lin simply smiled, offering no explanation, knowing they would eventually get to know him a little better once they returned to the human world. After everything was settled, Lin shifted the topic and reminded them about the lanternfish they were supposed to hunt. He suggested they keep going, but Leon shook his head and said it wouldn't work. He reasons that the fish had already hidden under the thick ice, and it wouldn't be found anytime soon. Still, he looked unwilling to give up, clenching his teeth as he muttered how they had waited 3 whole months for this chance, only to have it ruined by those scum. So that was why they had been so furious earlier. Lin understood, but he was curious and asked why they needed the lanternfish in the first place. Leon explained that someone in his guild had suffered injuries. Some strange poison had invaded the body of one of their members, and according to him, only the lantern on the fish's head could serve as an antidote. Lin nodded, suddenly remembering that the loot he got from the poison god may actually come in handy here. After a moment of thought, he told Leon that if it was poisoning, he might have a way to help. Leon's eyes widened in surprise, and he quickly pressed him, asking if that was true. Lin explained that as long as it wasn't corpse poison, the kind with no cure, it should be fine. Without hesitation, Leon waved his hand and ordered the team to return immediately. Soon, they took to the skies and flew toward their base. It didn't take long before a small fortress came into view. Lin, curious about the surroundings, followed Leon into a neat little courtyard. There, a woman stepped out with a welcoming smile, though her body looked weak and frail. Leon's usually stern face softened. Clearly, this was his wife, Han Donger. After the introductions, she greeted Lin warmly with gentle elegance. Lin politely addressed her and she insisted they sit while she poured tea. During the conversation, Lin learned what had really happened. Beneath the ice, they had run into a monster that carried a strange poison. After she was struck, both her level and attributes were suppressed, leaving her too weak to withstand cross-realm teleportation. That was why they had been stranded here, trying to hunt lanternfish, hoping to find a cure. Lin offered to help and hopes she can give it a try. Then he pulled out a vial filled with a strange green liquid. The name was strange, called poisonous liquid. However, despite its strange name, the stuff inside could act as either poison or antidote, and it even granted 1% resistance to poison permanently after consuming. This was all thanks to the poison god's divine seat, where he separated a tiny thread of power to make it. The moment he opened the vial, a powerful aura spilled out. Han Donger felt it instantly, and Leon, recognizing the divine presence, jumped to his feet in shock. Lin calmly told him to settle down and asked her to try it first. As soon as she drank, her whole body glowed with radiant light. Color returned to her cheeks, and her strength surged rapidly. Joy spread across Leon's face because he knew she was back to normal. Han Donger herself confirmed that her level and attributes had all recovered. Only then did Lin realize she was actually a level 80 pharmacist. The couple embraced happily, and for a moment Leon didn't even know how to thank Lin. But our boy simply waved his hand, brushing it off as nothing. After all, without Leon, he'd probably still be wandering aimlessly across the barbaric continent. Besides, he still needed Leon's help to reach Thunder Burial Canyon. Laughing, Leon clapped Lin on the shoulder and confidently promised to do anything for him. Not long after, the two arrived at a teleportation array. Although it couldn't send Lin directly to the Dragon God continent, it could take him to the only human city in the lower levels. Lin was a little surprised since he hadn't expected a human city to exist here. Leon explained with pride that it was unique to their empire, originally built in ancient times for a half-step supreme divine professional. Remarkably, it is still in use today. By now, the other guild members had gathered as well, delighted to see that Han Donger's poison had been cured. Leon openly declared that it was all thanks to Lin, and with her recovery, their guild once again had a level 80 pharmacist among them. He expressed his gratitude once more, but Lin only insisted it was a small matter. Leon then announced that from that moment on, Lin was no longer just a guest, but one of their own. The teleportation array activated, and after some time, they arrived before a massive city known as the Ancient Imperial City. Upon landing, Leon admitted that he himself wasn't qualified to use the teleportation array inside. Turns out, you had to be a 6-star colonel to have permission. He asks if he should go find someone. However, Lin asserts that there's no problem. The scene shifted to the city gates, where long lines of people waited for their turn. One of the passages was completely empty, and a stern-looking red-haired female knight stood at her post, keeping order. Her eyes quickly fell on Lin and Leon, who were heading toward the officer's passage. She seemed puzzled, especially at the sight of someone as low as level 52 attempting to use it. The two were stopped and asked to present their badges. The woman explained that without the proper rank, they'd have to queue in the regular line. Though only an 8-star lieutenant, she clearly took her duties very seriously. Leon was already prepared, showing the woman his 1-star colonel badge. She checked it carefully, then quickly saluted, though even so, his rank wasn't enough for entry. Then her attention shifted to Lin. He wasn't even wearing armor, let alone displaying any badge. To her, that looked like blatant disrespect, and tells our boy that badges were a symbol of honor, and he should have them presented at all times. Lin didn't want to make a scene again, but it was too late for that. Eventually, he pulled out his badge. It wasn't just any badge. It was a purple 2-star Divine General badge. For a moment, the woman froze, then snapped into a flawless salute. Standing tall, she introduced herself properly, saying Imperial City Corps, Ling Nan, reporting to the Divine General. Lin asked if this meant he qualified for the officer's passage. She quickly confirmed that he did. When he gestured toward Leon, asking if his friend could join him, she explained that Divine Generals held the highest authority here, meaning he was free to do what he pleased. Leon stayed silent, but his mind reeled in shock. Was it possible he had been away too long? How did Lin, whom he sees as a little brother, suddenly become a Divine General, and not just that, but a 2-star? There was only one explanation. Lin must have slain at least a demon lord. In other words, equivalent to a divine level. But was that really possible? Meanwhile, Lin asked the young lieutenant if he could purchase a map of the lower level. Ling Nan immediately nodded and asks him to follow her. Meanwhile, people in the other line looked on in confusion. Some had been hoping to see him embarrassed, but judging by Ling Nan's respectful attitude, it was obvious this man's rank was far above what they imagined. Suddenly, a figure shot across the sky at great speed. The crowd quickly recognized him, saying it was Feng Yiming, the Legion commander, also a 9-star colonel. And from the looks of it, he was heading straight for Lin. Whispers rippled through the onlookers as they speculated about the stranger's identity. What kind of person could possibly draw out the commander himself? Inside the passageway, Feng Yiming landed before Lin, standing tall and solemn. With a respectful salute, he addressed our boy as Divine General. From his surname, Lin guessed he must be from the Feng family. He tells him to relax, telling him not to be so formal, even mentioning that Feng Shu is his friend. Even so, the man kept his demeanor. He then brought out a pile of scrolls, explaining they contained all the maps and records in their possession. Lin unrolled one and confirmed Leon's words. From here he could teleport to the far edge of the Dragon God continent, but to reach Thunder Burial Canyon, he'd have to cross the violent Wind and Thunder Sea first, and his destination is near the center of the Wind and Thunder continent. Once he understood the route, Lin stated he would borrow the teleportation array. The commander agreed immediately and asked when he planned to leave. Lin answered without hesitation, saying, "Right now." The group slowly departed, leaving the crowd buzzing with shock. They finally realized that the young man was actually a divine general. Very quickly, whispers began connecting the dots and eventually revealed his identity. The city was about to erupt in commotion, though Lin himself had no idea. At the teleportation array, he waves goodbye to Leon, telling him farewell and promising they'd meet again someday. Meanwhile, Leon looked a little stiff, unlike his usual self, as if unsure how to stand before Lin anymore. Just then, the array lit up, and as Lin vanished, Commander Feng exhaled in relief, muttering that they had just witnessed a living legend. Ling Nan, still puzzled, couldn't help but ask why the commander treated this divine general differently from the others. Commander Feng gave her a look somewhere between exasperation and amusement, then questioned if all divine generals seemed the same to her, adding if she had ever seen one at level 52. She froze in disbelief because she had always thought Lin must be hiding his true level. But Commander Feng only laughed, shaking his head, and tells her that no, he isn't hiding anything. If she doesn't believe him, then check for herself when she has time. As the scene shifted, our boy had arrived on another continent, where towering waves crashed endlessly and thunder rolled across the skies. The endless roar of sea and storm gave him a fresh understanding of why this place is called the Violent Wind and Thunder Sea.